The wind carried more than dust through Dry Creek that morning. It carried whispers, sideways glances, and the weight of a town's judgment. Clara Mayfield felt every grain of it against her face as she stepped down from the general store's wooden platform, a sack of flour balanced against her hip. "There she goes," someone muttered from the shade of the saloon porch. The widow Mayfield. Clara kept her eyes forward, though she'd heard worse, much worse. The black dress she'd worn for 2 years now had faded to gray at the seams, but she wore it like armor. Let them talk. They'd been talking since the day they buried her husband, Samuel, with a bullet hole through his chest. They talked more when Samuel's brother, Joseph, disappeared after visiting her last spring. Never mind that Joseph had arrived drunk and left the same way, probably face down in some canyon. In Dry Creek, a woman alone was guilty of whatever sins the town needed her to carry. The main street stretched before her, rutted from last week's rain and already baking hard under the September sun. Clara shifted the flour sack to her other hip, her free hand brushing the fold of her skirt where the weight of her Colt .32 pressed reassuringly against her thigh. Samuel had taught her to shoot jackrabbits with it. These days, she had bigger concerns than rabbits. Mrs. Henderson pulled her daughter across the street when she saw Clara coming. The girl, maybe 7 years old, craned her neck to look back until her mother yanked her arm. "Don't stare, Mary Louise. And don't you go near that house, you hear?" Clara's jaw tightened, but she nodded politely at Mrs. Henderson anyway. "Kill them with kindness," her mother used to say. Though her mother had never lived in a town like Dry Creek, where kindness was seen as weakness and weakness could get you killed, she'd made it past the barber shop when she heard the boots behind her. 4 sets, from the sound of it, heavy and uneven, the way men walk when they've been drinking since sunrise. Well, if it ain't the Merry Widow herself. Clara didn't turn. She knew that voice, Bull Morrison, who'd been run out of 3 counties before washing up in Dry Creek like a bad penny. The flour sack grew heavier with each step. Hey now, we're talking to you, woman." This voice was younger, meaner, one of the Coulter boys, probably Jake. "Ain't polite to ignore folks." The footsteps quickened. Clara could smell them now, whiskey, sweat, and something else. Intent. The kind that made her fingers inch toward her skirt pocket. "Maybe she's deaf," Bull said loud enough for the whole street to hear. "Or maybe she only talks to men at night. That right, Widow Mayfield? You only sociable after dark?" A hand grabbed her shoulder, spinning her around. The flour sack hit the ground, splitting open in a white cloud. Bull's face loomed close, his breath foul enough to water her eyes. Behind him stood the 3 others, Jake Coulter, his brother Amos, and a thin man she didn't recognize. "Now look what you done," Bull said, gesturing at the spilled flour. "That's a shame. Good flour gone to waste. Maybe you should get on your knees and clean it up." "Take your hand off me." Clara's voice came out steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. Bull's grin widened. "Or what? You'll witch me like you done your husband, like you done his brother?" The other men laughed, closing in. The street had gone quiet. Clara could feel eyes watching from windows and doorways, but no one would help. Not for her. "I said," her hand slipped into her skirt pocket, "take your hand off me." "Feisty little thing, ain't she?" Jake Coulter stepped closer, reaching for her face. Maybe she needs a man to remind her of her place. The Colt came out smooth and fast, just like Samuel had taught her. The barrel pressed against Bull's belly before any of them could blink. "Step back." Now her voice shook, but not from fear. "All of you, step back or I'll put a hole in Bull's gut big enough to see tomorrow through." Bull's face went from red to white. His hand fell from her shoulder. "You crazy witch, you wouldn't dare." The gunshot cracked like thunder in the narrow street. Bull screamed, clutching his thigh where the bullet had torn through meat and muscle. He dropped to the dirt, blood already soaking through his pants. "That's one," Clara said, cocking the hammer again. "Who wants to be two?" Jake and Amos stumbled backward, hands raised. The thin man was already running, his boots kicking up dust as he fled toward the saloon. Jake pointed a shaking finger at her. "You're crazy! Everybody's seen it! You shot him!" "I surely did." Clara kept the gun level. "And I'll shoot you too if you don't drag him out of here. Now!" The Coulter brothers grabbed Bull under his arms, hauling him backward. He moaned and cursed, leaving a dark trail in the dust. Clara stood there until they disappeared around the corner, then slowly lowered the Colt. Her hands trembled now, adrenaline making her fingers clumsy as she tucked the gun away. The street remained silent. Then, one by one, doors closed, curtains fell back into place. The good people of Dry Creek had seen what they wanted to see. The dangerous widow Mayfield living up to her reputation. Clara knelt and scooped what flour she could salvage back into the torn sack. Most of it was ruined, mixed with dirt and Bull Morrison's blood. $3 worth? Gone. But she was still standing, still breathing, still free. That had to count for something. By the time she reached her small house at the edge of town, the sun had climbed higher, burning the back of her neck. The place wasn't much. 2 rooms, a lean-to kitchen, and a porch that needed new boards. But it was hers. Samuel had built it with his own hands the year they married, back when they'd had dreams of children and prosperity. Now it stood alone on its plot, separated from town by a 1/4 mile of scrub grass and suspicion. Clara set the salvaged flour on the kitchen table and pumped water into a basin to wash the dust from her face. Her reflection in the small mirror showed a woman of 28 who looked older. Sun lines around green eyes. Dark hair that had lost its shine. Cheekbones gone sharp from too many missed meals. "Pretty once," Samuel used to say, but Pretty didn't survive long out here. She'd just put the kettle on when she heard the horses. Multiple riders coming fast. Clara reached for the shotgun above the door, checking the loads. If Bull's friends had come for revenge, they'd find her ready. But the riders passed by, heading into town. Through the window, she caught a glimpse of Sheriff Dawson's gray hat. Her stomach sank. Bull must have lived long enough to spin his tale. By now, the story would be all over town. The widow Mayfield had gone mad, shooting innocent men in broad daylight. Clara sat at the kitchen table, the shotgun across her lap, and waited. Outside, the wind picked up again, rattling the loose boards on the porch. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, long and mournful. She knew the feeling. The sun was setting when she heard the voices in town, carried on the evening air. Angry voices getting louder. Through her window, she could see torches beginning to gather in the main street. The good people of Dry Creek had made their decision. Clara stood, checking her ammunition. 6 shots in the Colt, 2 shells in the shotgun. Not enough if they all came at once, but she'd make them remember her. She'd make them pay for every step they took toward her door. She was loading extra shells into her pocket when she noticed the silence. The voices had stopped. The torches weren't moving. Clara peered through the window, trying to see what had halted them. That's when she saw him, a lone rider on the road between town and her house, moving slow and easy like he had all the time in the world. Even in the fading light, she could make out the long gun across his saddle, a shotgun from the look of it. The crowd in town seemed frozen, watching him pass. The rider stopped at her gate, swinging down from a bay horse that looked like it had traveled hard miles. He was tall, that much she could tell, with shoulders that filled out his duster coat. A wide-brimmed hat shadowed his face, but she caught the glint of eyes that missed nothing as they surveyed her house, the yard, the defensive positions. He tied his horse to the gate post with unhurried movements, then lifted the shotgun from his saddle, not threatening, just carrying it easy in the crook of his arm. He pushed through the gate, boots steady on the packed earth of her yard. Clara met him on the porch, her own shotgun pointed at his chest. "That's far enough, mister." "State your business." He stopped at the foot of the steps, pushing his hat back enough for her to see his face in the dying light. Weathered but not old, maybe 35, with dark stubble and eyes the color of winter sky. A scar ran through his left eyebrow, old and white against sun-browned skin. "Evening, ma'am." His voice was deep, roughened by trail dust. "Name's Jedediah Carter. Folks call me Jed." "I don't care what folks call you. I asked your business." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Heard there was some trouble in town today. Heard a woman stood up to 4 men and gave one of them something to remember her by. And I figured a woman with that kind of sand might appreciate someone watching her back tonight." He gestured toward town with his chin. "That crowd's working up their courage. Won't be long before whiskey makes them brave." Clara kept the shotgun steady. "What's it to you?" "Nothing. Maybe. Or maybe I'm tired of seeing folks get railroaded by mobs. Maybe I think a person ought to get a fair shake, regardless of what the gossips say. You don't know me, mister. For all you know, everything they say is true. Maybe it is." He shifted the shotgun to his other arm, casual as could be. "But I know Bull Morrison, and I know he's needed shooting for a long time. I also know those torches back there are meant for you, and I know that ain't right." Clara studied him, looking for the trick. Men didn't just appear out of nowhere offering help, not without wanting something in return. "What are you after? Money? I don't have any. A place to stay? There's a hotel in town. Don't want your money. As for a place to stay." He looked back at town, then at her yard. "Mind if I make camp out here by your gate? Public land, near as I can tell. Man's got a right to camp on public land." "And if I said I minded?" "Then I'd camp down the road a piece, but those torches would have a clear path to your door." Clara lowered the shotgun an inch, though she kept her finger on the trigger. "Why?" For the first time, something flickered in those winter eyes. Old pain, maybe, or memory. "Let's just say I've seen what happens when good folks turn into a mob. Don't care to see it again." The torches in town were moving now, bobbing like fireflies as men found their nerve. Clara counted at least a dozen, maybe more. "You make your camp," she said finally. "But you stay out there. You try to come inside, I'll shoot you same as them." "Hey, fair enough." He touched his hat brim, a gesture that belonged to a more civilized place. "You might want to douse your lights, ma'am. No sense making it easy for them." Clara backed through her door, keeping the shotgun on him until the last moment. Through the window, she watched him tend his horse, moving with the easy efficiency of a man who'd spent more nights under stars than roofs. He built a small fire near the gate, not big enough to draw attention, just enough to show he was there. She doused her lamps as he'd suggested, then took up position by the front window. The torches were closer now, their voices carrying on the night wind. Drunk voices, angry voices, righteous voices. The sound of a town convincing itself that what it was about to do was justice. Outside, Jed Carter sat by his small fire, shotgun across his knees, as calm as if he were watching the sunset instead of an approaching mob. Clara didn't know whether he was brave or foolish or something else entirely. But as the first torch appeared at the bend in the road, she was glad he was there. The night was going to be long, and morning seemed very far away. The torches stopped 50 yards from Clara's gate, their bearers milling about like cattle smelling a wolf. Jed Carter didn't move from his spot by the fire, didn't even look up from the stick he was whittling. The firelight caught the barrel of his shotgun, making it gleam like a promise. Sheriff Dawson pushed through the crowd, his badge catching the torchlight. "You there, state your business." Jed's knife paused mid-stroke. He looked up slow, as if just noticing the dozen armed men standing in the road. "Evening. Sheriff. Fine night for a walk. I asked you a question, mister." "So you did." Jed went back to his whittling. "Name's Carter. Just passing through. Figured I'd camp here for the night. And this here's private property." "No, sir. It ain't. I'm on the public side of that gate. Mrs. Mayfield's property starts on the other side." He held up his stick, examining it in the firelight. "Course, if the town's got some ordinance against camping, I'd be happy to see the paperwork." Dawson's face flushed red. Behind him, someone shouted, "We ain't here for you, stranger. We got business with the widow." "That's so." Jed set down his stick and knife, standing with the kind of lazy grace that fooled nobody. The shotgun came up natural in his hands, not pointing at anyone, just there. "Well now, seems to me a dozen men with torches calling on a lone woman after dark ain't exactly business. Got another word for it where I come from." "You don't know what she done," Jake Coulter yelled from the safety of the crowd. "She shot Bull Morrison in cold blood." "He heard he grabbed her first. Heard there were 4 of you." Jed's voice carried clear in the night air. "Funny how it takes 4 men to hassle 1 woman, and now it takes 12 to finish the job." The crowd stirred, ugly murmurs rippling through them. Sheriff Dawson held up a hand. "Now see here, Carter, this woman's dangerous. She's been nothing but trouble since—" "Since her husband died?" Jed interrupted. "Since she had the gall to keep living in your town without a man's protection? That the trouble, you mean?" "Inside the house." Clara watched through a crack in the shutters, her heart beating hard against her ribs. She'd expected to face this alone, had prepared for it. But this stranger's words hit something deep, something she'd buried under 2 years of keeping her head down and her mouth shut. "You don't understand," Dawson said. "Her husband was killed investigating." He stopped abruptly, jaw snapping shut. "Investigating what?" Jed's voice had gone soft, the kind of soft that made smart men nervous. "Nothing. A dispute. The point is she's violent, unstable, and for the safety of the town—" "Sheriff." Jed shifted his weight, and 12 men took an unconscious step back. "I've been in a lot of towns, seen a lot of mobs. They all say the same thing: safety, justice, protecting the innocent. But you know what I notice? It's always the lone folks they go after, the ones without friends, without family, the ones who can't fight back." He paused, letting that sink in. "Except this one fought back, didn't she? And that's what really sticks in your craw. You threatening us?" This from a man Clara recognized as Tom Brewster, who ran the livery stable. "No, sir, just observing. See, I'm a peaceful man, but I'm also particular about my camping spots. I like quiet. And if you all proceed with whatever you're planning, well, it's liable to get real noisy. My shotgun here, she's got a voice like thunder and wake the whole county, I expect." "There's 12 of us and 1 of you," someone called out. "That's true," Jed nodded agreeably. "Course, this is a 10-gauge coach gun, loaded with buck. At this range, I figure I can take 3, maybe 4 of you before you get me. Question is, which 4 want to go home to their families in a box?" The mob shifted uneasily. Torches wavered. "Now I got a question," Jed continued. This Bull Morrison, he press charges, he swear out a complaint? Dawson's silence was answer enough. So you're here on your own initiative. No warrant, no legal cause, just torches and righteous anger. Jed shook his head. Seems to me if Mrs. Mayfield broke the law, you'd handle it proper, through the courts. Unless maybe the courts wouldn't side with you. Unless maybe a judge would ask uncomfortable questions about 4 men cornering a widow in the street. You don't know nothing about it, Jake Coulter spat. I know enough. Jed's voice hardened. I know brave men don't need torches to visit a lady. I know honest lawmen don't lead mobs. And I know every man here will have to look at himself in the mirror tomorrow. Question is, what do you want to see looking back? The silence stretched taut as fence wire. Then, from the back of the crowd, one man turned and walked away. Then another. Like a dam breaking, the mob began to dissolve. Some muttered curses, some threats, but they were leaving. Sheriff Dawson stood his ground longest, hate radiating from every line of his body. This ain't over. She can't hide behind you forever. Not hiding, Jed said mildly. Just camping, but Sheriff, next time you want to visit Mrs. Mayfield, maybe come in daylight, with a warrant, like the law says. Dawson spat in the dirt, then turned on his heel. Within minutes, the road was empty except for the smell of torch smoke and the echo of departing hooves. Jed settled back by his fire, picking up his whittling stick like nothing had happened. Clara watched him for a long moment, then made a decision that would have shocked her an hour ago. She unbarred the door and stepped onto the porch. Mr. Carter. He looked up. Ma'am. That was... She searched for words. That was something... That was nothing but talk. They'll be back, once they work up the nerve again. Why did you do it? He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, you ever see a lynching, Mrs. Mayfield? No. I have 3 times. Once was a horse thief, guilty as sin. Once was a man who killed another in a fair fight, but the dead man had friends. And once, he stared into the fire. Once was a woman, Chinese. She ran a laundry, minded her own business, but her husband died, and suddenly folks decided she was bad luck. Started with whispers, ended with a rope. Clara's hand went to her throat involuntarily. I was young then, deputy marshal, full of spit and principle. Tried to stop it legal-like. Went to the sheriff, the mayor, even a judge. They all said the same thing. Sometimes the people need to let off steam. Better one Chinese woman than a riot. His knife bit deep into the wood. I stood there and watched them hang her. Told myself I'd done what I could. Told myself it wasn't my fight. What happened? Nothing. Town went back to normal. Found themselves a new target 6 months later, a Mexican family, then a widow who wouldn't sell her land. See, once a town gets a taste for it, they don't stop. They just get better at justifying it. Clara pulled her shawl tighter. So you're here to save me, is that it? No, ma'am. I'm here because I'm tired of standing by. If they want to hang you, they'll have to go through me first. Maybe that's not much, but it's what I got. I didn't ask for your help. Didn't offer it for you? He looked up then, and his eyes were haunted. Offered it for me. So maybe I can sleep without seeing that Chinese woman's face. They stood there in silence, 2 damaged people separated by a yard and a lifetime of hurt. Finally, Clara said, there's coffee on the stove, if you want some. That's kind, but I'll stay out here. Like you said, we don't know each other. No, Clara agreed. We don't. She turned to go, then paused. Mr. Carter? Thank you. Whatever your reasons, thank you. He touched his hat brim again, that gesture of vanished courtesy. Get some rest, ma'am. Tomorrow's liable to be interesting. Clara went inside and barred the door. But she didn't go to bed. Instead, she sat by the window, watching the stranger who'd planted himself between her and the world. She didn't trust him. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. But for the first time in 2 years, she didn't feel entirely alone. The night wore on. Jed Carter kept his vigil by the fire, occasionally adding a stick, never relaxing his watch. Around midnight, Clara made a decision. She unbarred the door again, carrying out a cup of coffee and a blanket. "Nights get cold," she said, setting them on a stump within his reach. "Appreciate it." She hesitated. "Those things you asked Dawson about my husband investigating something. You knew?" "I guessed. Man doesn't usually get shot for no reason. And that sheriff shut up real quick when he mentioned it. Sam was a good man, honest, too honest for this town. A lot of that going around." Clara almost smiled. He found out some of the town council were running a counterfeiting operation, print shop in the back of the land office. He was gathering evidence to take to the federal marshal when... She trailed off. When they killed him. Made it look like a gambling dispute. Nobody questioned it. Sam didn't gamble, but nobody wanted to hear that. And his brother? Joseph came to help me settle Sam's affairs. Started asking the same questions Sam had asked. One night he said he was going to the land office to look for something. Never came back. Sheriff said he must have run off. But you don't think so? I think he's buried somewhere out in the desert. I think they killed him just like they killed Sam. Her voice had gone flat, emotionless. It was the only way she could say it. Jed sipped the coffee, studying her over the rim. "You got proof?" "Some. Sam kept notes. I have them hidden." "Why not take them to the federal marshals yourself? You think they'd listen to me? A woman? The notorious widow Mayfield?" She laughed bitterly. "I tried. Right after Sam died, they practically laughed me out of the office. Said I was hysterical with grief." "So you stayed?" "Where would I go? This house is all I have. Sam built it. It's..." She stopped, embarrassed by the emotion in her voice. "It's home," Jed finished. "I understand." Something in the way he said it made her look at him closer. "You lost someone too." It wasn't a question. He nodded slowly. "Wife, daughter. Cholera took them while I was off chasing outlaws. Came home to 2 graves and an empty house. I'm sorry. Long time ago now, but yeah, I understand about staying. Sometimes a place is all you got left of them." They lapsed into silence, 2 people sharing grief across a campfire. Finally, Clara stood. "I'll leave the door unbarred, if there's trouble." "There won't be. Not tonight. They'll need time to lick their wounds and work up fresh courage." Clara nodded and went inside. This time, she did go to bed, though she kept the Colt under her pillow. Outside, she could hear Jed moving around occasionally, keeping watch. It should have made her nervous, having a strange man so close. Instead, for the first time in months, she fell into deep sleep. She woke to sunlight and the smell of bacon. For a confused moment, she thought Sam had come back, that the last 2 years had been a nightmare. Then reality crashed in, and she reached for the gun. The cooking smell was coming from outside. Clara dressed quickly and peered through the window. Jed had a small fire going with a skillet balanced on stones. His horse was unsaddled, grazing on the sparse grass. Clara stepped onto the porch. "Making yourself at home?" "Morning, ma'am. Figured you might be hungry, or hard night and all." "I don't need..." "When's the last time you ate a real meal?" He didn't look up from the bacon. "Not coffee and stale bread. Real food." Clara opened her mouth to protest, then closed it She couldn't remember. "There's enough for two," he said. "Be ashamed to waste it." Pride warred with hunger. Hunger won. Clara fetched plates and cups from inside, along with the last of her coffee. They ate in companionable silence, watching the sun paint the desert gold. "They'll come at you different now," Jed said eventually, "illegal-like. If that sheriff's got any brains, try to force you out through the law." "Let them try. I haven't broken any laws." "Don't have to. They own the law here. They'll find something, taxes, ordinances, some made-up violation. Seen it before." Clara set down her fork. "So what do I do?" "Fight back, but smart. You said you have your husband's notes?" "Yes." "Might be time to look at them again. See if there's enough to interest someone higher up the food chain. A federal judge, maybe, or a newspaper man from a bigger town." "And you? How long are you planning to camp at my gate?" He smiled then. The first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, revealing the younger man under the trail dust and sorrow. "Well now, that depends. How long until you trust me enough to tell me where you've been practicing with that Colt? Because that shot yesterday, that wasn't beginner's luck." Despite everything, Clara found herself almost smiling back. "Behind the house, there's a gully where I've set up targets. Mind if I take a look? Been a while since I've done any friendly shooting." "Friendly?" "As opposed to the other kind." They spent the morning in the gully, taking turns with her Colt and his Navy revolver. He was good, very good, but she held her own. It felt strange, doing something almost like fun. She'd forgotten what that was like. They were cleaning the guns when they heard horses approaching. Jed was on his feet instantly, shotgun in hand. But Clara recognized the rider. "It's Doc Holliday, not the famous one, Tom Holliday. He's decent." Doc was a thin man with kind eyes and shaking hands that steadied only when he held medical instruments. He pulled up at the gate, looking nervous. "Mrs. Mayfield, Mr. Carter." He tipped his hat. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I thought you should know. There's talk in town. Sheriff Dawson's called a town meeting for tonight. Word is they're going to vote on condemning your property. Public safety. They're saying—" Clara's hand stilled on the Colt. "Can they do that? With Judge Thorne in their pocket? They can do anything they want." Doc shifted in his saddle. "There's more. Bull Morrison's taken a turn. I've done what I can, but if he dies, it's because he forced her hand," Jed said quietly. "I know that. You know that. And but a jury in this town?" Doc shook his head. "I just thought you should be prepared." "Thank you, Tom." Clara's voice was steady. For coming out here. I know it couldn't have been easy. But Sam was a good man. He deserved better. So do you." He turned his horse, then looked back. "For what it's worth, not everyone in town agrees with what's happening. But fear's a powerful thing. Makes cowards of us all." After he left, Clara and Jed stood in silence. Finally, she said, "It's starting." "Yes?" "They won't stop until they have me out, one way or another." "No, they won't." He looked at her steadily. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" Clara thought about Sam, about the house he'd built, about 2 years of keeping her head down and hoping to be left alone. She thought about that Chinese woman Jed had described, hanging from a rope while good people watched. "I'm going to fight," she said, "but like you said, smart. Will you help me?" This time his smile was sharp as a blade. "Ma'am, I thought you'd never ask." The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning cool. In town, Sheriff Dawson prepared his meeting, confident that by nightfall, the widow Mayfield problem would be solved. He had no idea that out at the lonely house on the edge of town, plans of a different sort were being made. The real fight was just beginning. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across Clara's kitchen table, where Sam's journal lay open like an accusation. Jed studied the pages with the focus of a man reading trail signs, occasionally asking Clara to clarify a detail or explain a name. She sat across from him, hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, watching this stranger piece together her husband's death. "Your Sam was thorough," Jed said finally. "Names, dates, amounts. He's got Deputy Thorne taking bribes, Mayor Hutchins skimming town funds, and this land office scheme." He tapped the page. "Judge Thorne's brother-in-law running the whole operation." "Gale Thorne," Clara said. "The deputy. He's the one who really runs things. Sheriff Dawson's just for show. Weak, likes his bottle too much, but Gale." She shuddered. Sam always said Gale had dead eyes, like looking at a rattlesnake. "Says here Sam found printing plates in the land office basement. Federal currency. That's a hanging offense. If you can prove it, if anyone listens." Clara stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "I've been over those notes 100 times. It's all there. But without Sam to testify, without the physical evidence..." "The plate's still there?" "How would I know? I can't exactly walk into the land office and check." Jed leaned back, studying her. "But Joseph tried." "Yes." The word came out raw. "The night he disappeared, he said Sam had told him where to look. And you think they killed him for it?" "I know they did." Clara's hands clenched on the windowsill. "Tom Holliday told me later, private-like, that Gale Thorne came to him that night, had a gash on his arm, said it was from a broken bottle, but Tom said it looked like a knife wound. Joseph fought back. He was a good man, quiet but good. He just wanted to see justice for his brother." Clara turned from the window. "They probably threw his body down a mine shaft. Plenty of them around here." Jed was quiet for a moment. "Then show me the rest. Everything you've collected." Clara hesitated, then went to the bedroom. She came back with a cloth-wrapped bundle, setting it carefully on the table. Inside were more papers, receipts, telegram copies, even a daguerreotype of Sam in his Sunday best. "This one," she said, touching a hotel receipt. "Sam found it in the mayor's office. It's from St. Louis. Same week a bank there reported counterfeit bills. And this," she unfolded a telegram. "Reply from a federal marshal saying he'd look into Sam's concerns, dated 2 days before Sam died. They knew he'd contacted the authorities. Must have, that's when everything changed. Suddenly folks who'd been friendly turned cold. Sam started carrying his gun to bed." Her voice broke slightly. "Lot of good it did him." Jed studied the evidence with the patience of a hunter. After a while, he said, "It's good, but not enough. We need something current, something that proves they're still at it." "How? I can't get near the land office. After what happened with Bull, they'd shoot me on sight and claim self-defense." "No," Jed agreed, "but I can..." Clara stared at him. "You just faced down their mob. They know you're with me now. I'm a drifter who made camp in the wrong spot. Had a moment of conscience, maybe. But drifters move on. If I show up in town tomorrow looking for work, making it clear I've reconsidered my position..." He shrugged. "Men like Thorne always need another gun hand. That's insane. That's one word for it." He started rewrapping the papers. "Keep these safe. If something happens..." "Nothing's going to happen." Clara surprised herself with the vehemence in her voice. Jed smiled. "Glad to hear it. Now, tell me about the town meeting tonight. Who'll be there?" They spent the rest of the afternoon planning. As the sun started its descent, Jed saddled his horse. "I'll head to town, make myself visible. Let them think I'm abandoning you. And then I'll watch. Listen, learn what they're planning. He swung into the saddle. Bar your door. Keep the shotgun handy. Jed, she caught his stirrup. Why are you doing this, really? He looked down at her, and for a moment his careful mask slipped. Because somewhere out there, my wife and daughter are watching, and I'd like them to see a man worth remembering. He rode off before she could respond, leaving Clara alone with the approaching dark and the weight of hope she hadn't felt in 2 years. In town, the meeting hall was already filling when Jed tied his horse outside the saloon. He could feel eyes on him as he pushed through the doors, conversations stopping mid-sentence. The barkeep, a mountainous man named Brick, gave him a hard look. Whiskey? Jed said, laying coins on the bar. Brick poured without comment. Jed took his drink to a corner table, hat pulled low, making himself unremarkable. Slowly, conversation resumed around him. Tell you, that woman's got to go, someone was saying. Today it's Bull. Tomorrow it could be any of us. They heard that Drifter lit out, another voice added. Guess he figured out which side his bread's buttered on. Jed nursed his whiskey and listened. After a while, Deputy Gale Thorne himself walked in, flanked by 2 hard cases Jed recognized from last night's mob. Thorne was everything Clara had described, medium height but solid, with pale eyes that never seemed to blink and a way of moving that suggested violence held barely in check. A meeting's in an hour, Thorne announced. Make sure everyone's there. Time we dealt with our problem permanent-like. What about legal troubles? Brick asked. If she's got them papers her husband left. What papers? Thorne's voice was soft, dangerous. Woman's alone, probably half mad with grief. Who's going to believe her wild stories? And that Drifter might... Thorne's eyes swept the room, passed over Jed without recognition. Drifters drift. That's what they do. The crowd murmured agreement. Jed finished his whiskey and stood, making his way to the bar for another. As he passed Thorne's table, he let himself stumble slightly, catching the edge for balance. Watch yourself, one of Thorne's men growled. Sorry. Jed straightened, let his eyes meet Thorne's briefly. No offense meant. Thorne studied him with those reptile eyes. You're the one from last night, Carter. That's right. Thought you'd moved on. In thinking about it, man's got to eat, though. Heard there might be work hereabouts. What kind of work? Jed shrugged. Whatever pays, I'm not particular. Thorne's smile was thin as paper. Man who's not particular might find opportunities in a town like this. You planning on attending the meeting? Wasn't invited. Consider yourself invited. Might be educational. Jed touched his hat brim. Appreciate it. He returned to his table, feeling Thorne's eyes on his back. The game was set now. All he had to do was play it right. The meeting hall was packed when Jed slipped in, keeping to the shadows at the back. Mayor Hutchins, a florid man who sweated even in cool weather, was already speaking. Matter of public safety. The Mayfield property sits on the main route into town. Having an unstable, violent woman there threatens commerce, threatens our families. She ain't threatened nobody who didn't threaten her first. The voice came from Doc Holliday, standing near the middle of the room. You weren't there, Doc, Jake Coulter called out. No, she was like a wild animal, could have killed Bull. From what I heard, Bull grabbed her. 4 of you against 1 woman. This from an unexpected source, Mrs. Palmer, who ran the boarding house. Seems to me she showed remarkable restraint. A murmur ran through the crowd. Mayor Hutchins pounded his gavel. The point is, we have laws, procedures. We can't have people taking justice into their own hands. Like forming mobs, Doc Holliday shot back. That the kind of procedure you mean? Sheriff Dawson stood up, swaying slightly. Jed could smell the whiskey from 20 feet away. Now. Nobody formed any mob. Concerned citizens, that's all. But the fact remains, Mrs. Mayfield is a danger. I'm recommending the town council vote to condemn her property, for the greater good. You can't just take someone's land. Mrs. De Palmer again. Bolder now. We can if it's a matter of public safety. Judge Thorne spoke from his seat at the council table. There's precedent. The town has the right to protect itself. More arguments erupted. Jed noticed something interesting. The opposition was larger than he'd expected. Not a majority, but substantial. Clara had supporters. They'd just been too afraid to speak before. Gale Thorne stood up, and the room gradually quieted. Folks, let's be honest here. We all know the Mayfield woman has been trouble since her husband died. Maybe she's mad with grief. Maybe she always was touched. But do we wait until she kills someone? Until your children aren't safe on the streets? My children were safe until men like Bull Morrison started accosting women in broad daylight. A new voice said. Jed was surprised to see the schoolmarm, Miss Eastwood, on her feet. Perhaps we should discuss that. Nobody's defending Morrison, Thorne said smoothly. But two wrongs don't make a right. The woman is unstable, living alone, shooting at people. What's next? I'll tell you what's next. Every head turned as Jed stepped forward from the shadows. What's next is more of the same. You run her off, take her land, and then you'll find another target. That's how it works, isn't it? Thorne's eyes narrowed. I thought you were reconsidering your position, Carter. I am. I've been sitting here listening, and I'm reconsidering a lot of things. Jed moved to the center of the room, aware of every eye on him. Like why a town this concerned about law and order had 4 drunk men attacking a woman in the street. Like why the sheriff leads midnight raids instead of serving warrants. Like why folks are so eager to take land that belongs to a widow. You don't know anything about our town, Mayor Hutchins blustered. I know enough. I know scared people when I see them. Question is, what are you scared of? One woman with a pistol? Or what she might say if anyone bothers to listen? The room erupted, shouting, accusations, chairs scraping, and through it all. Gale Thorne watched Jed with those dead eyes, and Jed knew he'd just painted a target on his back. Judge Thorne pounded his gavel repeatedly. Order! We'll have order! When the room finally quieted, he continued. The council will vote. All in favor of condemning the Mayfield property? 3 hands raised, the judge, the mayor, and Councilman Briggs. All opposed? 2 hands, Doc Holliday and, surprisingly, Walter Chen, who ran the general store. The motion passes, Judge Thorne announced. Sheriff Dawson will serve notice tomorrow. Mrs. Mayfield has 7 days to vacate. This isn't right. Miss Eastwood stood again. You can't just... The council has spoken. Thorne cut her off. Meeting adjourned. People filed out, some satisfied, others troubled. Jed felt a hand on his arm. Doc Holliday. That was brave, Doc said quietly. Stupid, but brave. Sometimes they're the same thing. Are you really going to stand by her? Someone has to. Doc glanced around, then leaned closer. There are others who feel the same. Not many, not enough, but some. If you need help, I'll remember that. Outside, Jed found Gale Thorne waiting by his horse. Carter, a word. Jed stopped, hand casual near his gun. Deputy, you made a mistake tonight. This town has a way of dealing with troublemakers. Like Sam Mayfield? Thorne's face didn't change, but something flickered in those pale eyes. Sam Mayfield died in a gambling dispute. Tragic, but it happens. And his brother? He left town. People do that. Sure they do. Jed untied his horse. Well, Deputy, thanks for the warning. I'll keep it in mind. You do that. And Carter, that offer of work, it's rescinded. Might be best if you moved on after all. Might be. Then again, I've got a week. That's how long you gave Mrs. Mayfield, right? Seems only neighborly to help her pack. He swung into the saddle before Thorne could respond. Riding out of town at an easy pace, he could feel eyes on him all the way to the edge of the light. Clara was waiting on the porch when he arrived, shotgun across her lap. How bad? They voted to take your land. You've got 7 days. She nodded, unsurprised. And you? You could have stayed quiet. Could have. He dismounted, suddenly tired. But I've been quiet before, didn't care for how it felt. Gale Thorne won't let this go. You've challenged him public. He'll come for you. Let him come. Jed led his horse to the lean-to. But first, tell me more about this judge. Thorne's brother-in-law, you said? Yes, Judge Marcus Thorne. Been circuit judge for 10 years. Owns half the county. Clara stood, setting the shotgun aside. Why? Because judges have to answer to someone. They have records, cases, decisions that can be reviewed. He turned to face her. Your husband was building a federal case. Maybe it's time to finish what he started. How? We've got 7 days. Then we'd better get to work. He smiled grimly. Starting with figuring out if those printing plates are still in that land office. Clara stared at him. You're serious? Dead serious. They want a fight. Let's give them one they won't forget. The moon was rising, full and bright. Somewhere in town, Gale Thorne was making his own plans. But here, in this small house on the edge of nowhere, 2 unlikely allies began plotting the downfall of an empire built on lies and fear. 7 days. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. The next 3 days passed in a blur of careful planning and cautious preparation. Jed had moved his camp closer to the house, setting up in the old barn where he could keep watch while studying the town's routines through Clara's husband's field glasses. Every morning, he'd ride out before dawn, scouting the land office, memorizing guard patterns, watching who came and went. Clara, meanwhile, cataloged every piece of evidence Sam had gathered, creating a comprehensive timeline that would make sense to an outside investigator. She wrote letters to newspapers in Sacramento and San Francisco. Though she didn't send them yet, everything hinged on finding those plates. On the 3rd night, as they sat reviewing their plans by lamplight, Clara noticed Jed cleaning his guns with unusual care. Tonight? She asked. Tomorrow night. New moon. Darker. He reassembled the Colt with practiced ease. Thorne's men have gotten lazy. They only post 1 guard after midnight, and he usually dozes off around 2. I should come with you. No. His tone brooked no argument. Someone needs to stay here, keep up appearances. Besides, if I'm caught, you need to be able to deny knowing anything about it. Clara wanted to argue but recognized the wisdom. Sam used to say there was a hidden compartment in the basement floor, southwest corner, under a loose stone. I'll find it. Jed holstered the Colt and started on his rifle. What about Doc Holliday? Can we trust him? Tom's a good man. Weak, maybe, but good. He's afraid of Thorne, but he hated what they did to Sam. A fear's not always a weakness. Sometimes it just means a man's smart enough to recognize danger. Jed held the rifle up to the light, checking the barrel. What about the schoolmarm? She seemed fired up at the meeting. Rebecca Eastwood. She's from back east. Been here 2 years. Sam helped her when some cowboys got too friendly at a town dance. She's got spine. We might need people like that when this breaks open. If it breaks open. Clara stood, pacing to the window. Jed, what if the plates aren't there? What if they moved them? Then we find another way. But something tells me they didn't. Men like Thorne get comfortable, complacent. They've run this town so long they can't imagine anyone challenging them. A horse whinnied outside, and both of them tensed. Jed was at the window in 2 strides, rifle ready. After a moment, he relaxed. Just a coyote. Spooked your mare. Clara's heart was still racing. I hate this. The waiting. The not knowing when they'll come. They won't come yet. They're legal men, remember? They'll wait for the 7 days. Serve their papers all proper like. Then, when you refuse to leave. He trailed off, but Clara could finish the thought. And then they'll come with guns and claim I resisted. That's their plan, but plans can change. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Clara tried to go about her normal routine, feeding the chickens, tending the small garden, mending clothes, but her mind was on the coming night. Jed spent the day in the barn, resting, preparing. As dusk fell, he emerged dressed in dark clothes, face grim with purpose. If I'm not back by dawn, take the evidence and ride for Fort Buchanan. Ask for Major Kellerman, he's honest. You'll be back. Clara handed him a small cloth bag, food, and Sam's lucky coin. He always carried it. Jed hefted the silver dollar, then pocketed it. I'll bring it back. He vanished into the darkness, moving with the silent grace of a man who'd spent years hunting both animals and men. Clara barred the door and settled in to wait. Sam's journal opened before her, though she couldn't focus on the words. In town, Jed kept to the shadows, avoiding the main street. The saloon was still bright with light and noise, but the rest of Dry Creek had bedded down. He circled wide, approaching the land office from behind. Sure enough, a single guard sat on the back steps, rifle across his knees, head nodding. Jed waited, patient as a hunting cat. The guard jerked awake once, looked around, then settled back. 20 minutes later, his breathing had evened into sleep. Jed moved in, swift and silent. The man never woke up, just slumped sideways after Jed's gun butt connected with his skull. The back door was locked, but Jed had expected that. The window, however, had a simple latch. He was inside in moments, standing in what appeared to be a storage room. Boxes of papers, filing cabinets, the musty smell of old documents. He made his way carefully to the stairs Clara had described. The basement was pitch black. Jed lit a candle, shielding the flame with his body. Southwest corner. He found the spot, running his hands over the floor until he felt it, one stone slightly higher than the rest. He pried it up with his knife. Underneath was a metal box, and inside that, well, I'll be damned, Jed whispered. Not just plates, but samples of the counterfeit bills, correspondence with buyers, and a ledger listing every transaction for the past 3 years. Sam Mayfield had found the mother lode and hidden it back where they'd never think to look. Jed was replacing the stone when he heard footsteps overhead. He blew out the candle, pressing himself against the wall. The steps came closer. Descending. A light appeared on the stairs. Sure, I heard something, a voice was saying on Gale Thorne. Probably just rats, another voice replied. This place is full of them. Maybe, but with that drifter sniffing around, they were at the bottom now. Jed's hand found his gun, though shooting his way out was the last thing he wanted. The light swept the basement, passing inches from his position. Nothing here, the second voice said. Come on, Gale, you're jumping at shadows. Hey, shadows don't leave guards unconscious. But Thorne was already turning back. Double the watch tomorrow, and find out where Carter's been keeping himself. They left, and Jed waited a full 10 minutes before moving. Getting out was harder with the box, but he managed, slipping through the window and melting back into the night. The guard was stirring, groaning, He'd wake with a headache and a story about being jumped by multiple men. Pride would demand it. Jed was halfway back to Clara's when he realized he was being followed. Just one rider, hanging back but matching his pace. He turned his horse toward a stand of cottonwoods, dismounting and finding cover. The follower came on, cautious now. "Carter?" A familiar voice. "It's Doc Holliday, don't shoot." Jed emerged from cover. "Doc, you scared 10 years off me." "Sorry, I was coming back from a call, saw you leaving town. Figured you might need help." Doc's eyes went to the box tied to Jed's saddle. "Is that what I think it is?" "Depends on what you think it is. Evidence. The kind that could get us all killed." Doc's hands were shaking worse than usual. "They killed Sam for that. Joseph, too." "I know." "So what now? You can't go to Judge Thorne. Sheriff's useless, and the mayor—" "We go over their heads. Federal marshal, maybe a territorial judge. Someone outside Thorne's reach." Doc was quiet for a moment. "There's a federal judge coming through Tucson next week. Judge William Brennan. He's got a reputation for being incorruptible." "How do you know this?" "Rebecca, Miss Eastwood. She corresponds with her sister in Tucson. Mentioned it at the meeting, trying to threaten Thorne with outside oversight." Doc laughed bitterly. "Lot of good it did." "Can you get word to her? See if she can find out exactly when this judge will be there?" "I can try. But Jed, even if we get the evidence to him, Thorne won't go quietly. He'll burn this whole town down before he lets himself hang. And then we'd better be ready for fire." They parted ways at the crossroads, Doc heading back to town, Jed continuing to Clara's. He found her on the porch, rifle ready, and held up the box in triumph. "Oh my God," she breathed, examining the contents by lamplight. "This is more than Sam ever told me about. Look at these names. It's not just Thorne. Half the territory's involved. Which means we've got to be extra careful. Men with this much to lose won't hesitate to kill." They spent the rest of the night documenting everything, making copies of key pages. Clara's neat handwriting filled sheet after sheet as she transcribed the most damning entries. By dawn, they had enough to hang 20 men. "We need to hide this," Clara said, "on somewhere they won't think to look." "I know just the place." Jed gathered the originals. "That old mine shaft, 2 miles north, the one that caved in last year. But if something happens to us, that's why we make a map, send it to someone trustworthy." He looked at her. "You know anyone in California? Family, maybe?" "My sister in San Diego, Margaret. She married a newspaper man." Perfect. We send her a letter. Tell her if she doesn't hear from you in 2 weeks, she should send this map to the federal authorities." They worked through the morning, exhaustion forgotten in the urgency of their task. By noon, everything was hidden, letters written, contingencies planned. That's when they saw the dust cloud approaching from town. "They're early," Clara said, checking her rifle. But it wasn't Thorne or the sheriff. It was Rebecca Eastwood, driving her buggy at a reckless pace. She pulled up in a scatter of dust and gravel, her usually neat appearance disheveled. "Hey, they know," she gasped, "about last night, and they're coming, and the whole town's in an uproar." "Slow down," Jed said. "No, what happened?" The guard woke up, started screaming about being attacked. "Thorne's convinced you took something. He's gathering men, lots of them. And Clara," she turned to the other woman, "they're not waiting for the 7 days. They're coming now." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. How many? 20, maybe more, some from neighboring ranches. "Thorne's calling it a posse. Says you're both wanted for theft and assault." "How long do we have?" Jed was already moving, checking weapons, gathering ammunition. "An hour, maybe less. I came as fast as I could." "You shouldn't have come at all," Clara said. They'll know you warned us. Rebecca lifted her chin. Let them. I'm tired of being afraid. She reached into her buggy, pulling out a wrapped bundle. I brought what I could, ammunition, some food, and this. She handed Clara a sealed envelope. From Judge Brennan's office. He'll be in Tucson in 4 days. 4 days? If they could survive that long. Rebecca, get out of here, Jed ordered. Go back to town. Be seen somewhere public. You don't know anything about this. I'm not leaving. Yes, you are. Clara gripped her friend's hands. We need you free, not arrested. If something happens to us, someone needs to know where the evidence is hidden. Jed pulled Rebecca aside, speaking quietly. Her eyes widened, but she nodded. Minutes later, she was gone, her buggy raising dust on the road back to town. She's brave, Clara said. They all are in their way, even Doc. Jed hauled a box of ammunition to the porch, but bravery won't stop bullets. We need defensive positions. They worked frantically, overturning Clara's heavy kitchen table for cover, positioning weapons at windows, filling buckets with water in case of fire. Jed retrieved his rifle from the barn, along with extra shells. They'll probably try to talk first, he said. Make it look legal. When that fails. I know. Clara checked her Colt for the 10th time. Jed, if this goes bad, it won't. But if it does, promise me you'll get that evidence to the judge, whatever it takes. He met her eyes. We're both getting out of this, but yes, I promise. The dust cloud was visible now, brown against the afternoon sky. Clara could make out individual riders, spread in a wide line. At the center, she recognized Gale Thorne's black horse. 22 men, Jed counted, plus probably more circling behind. In the barn, Clara realized, they'll try to flank us through the barn. Already ahead of you. Jed showed her the wire he'd strung at ankle height. Not much, but it might slow them down. The riders stopped just out of rifle range. Thorne rode forward alone, stopping at the gate. Mrs. Mayfield Carter, this is Deputy Thorne. You're wanted for questioning regarding a theft at the land office. Come out with your hands empty. What theft? Clara called back. The only thieves in this town wear badges. Don't make this harder than necessary. You're outnumbered. Surrender now and you'll get a fair trial. Like Sam got? Clara's voice cracked with anger. Like Joseph got? Thorne's face darkened. Last chance. Come out or we're coming in. Come ahead, Jed shouted. First man through that gate gets a belly full of lead. Thorne wheeled his horse around, rejoining his men. Clara could see him giving orders, men dismounting, spreading out. Here they come, Jed said quietly. Remember, make every shot count. And Clara, whatever happens, it's been an honor. She looked at him, this man who'd appeared from nowhere to stand beside her. The honor's mine. The first shot shattered the afternoon quiet, splintering wood inches from Clara's head. Then the world exploded into chaos, gunfire, shouting, the acrid smell of powder smoke. The siege of Clara Mayfield's house had begun, and in a hidden mine shaft 2 miles away, evidence waited that could bring down an empire, if anyone survived to use it. The first wave came hard and fast, windows shattered under the barrage, glass showering across the floor like deadly rain. Clara pressed herself against the wall, counting muzzle flashes through what remained of her kitchen curtains. Her Colt barked twice, and a man cried out, tumbling behind a water trough. They're trying the back, Jed shouted from the other room. Clara heard his rifle boom, followed by cursing and the sound of men scrambling for cover. The wire he'd strung had done its work. She could hear someone groaning about a twisted ankle. Watch the roof, Jed called. They'll try to burn us out. Sure enough, smoke began seeping through the ceiling boards. Someone had managed to throw a torch up top. Clara grabbed one of the water buckets, but Jed stopped her. Not yet. Let them think it's working. Through the smoke and chaos, Clara heard something else. Hoofbeats, moving fast from town. More reinforcements for Thorn? But the shooting from outside faltered, men shouting in confusion. "What the hell?" someone yelled. "Who's that?" The answer came in the form of a familiar voice bellowing above the gunfire. "This is Major Kellerman, United States Army. Cease fire immediately or face federal charges." Clara's heart leaped. The cavalry, literally. "It's a trick," Thorn's voice sharp with desperation. "Keep shooting!" But military carbines had joined the fray now, their disciplined volley fire distinctly different from the ragged shots of the posse. Clara risked a look through the broken window. Blue uniforms. At least a dozen soldiers had taken positions along the road. At their head, a gray-bearded officer sat ramrod straight on his horse. "A Deputy Thorn," Major Kellerman's voice carried the authority of command. "Order your men to stand down. This is now a federal matter." "You have no jurisdiction here," Thorn shouted back, but Clara could hear the uncertainty creeping in. "Armed assault on federal witnesses falls under my jurisdiction. Yes, Deputy, witnesses, Mrs. Mayfield and Mr. Carter are under the protection of the United States government pending their testimony in a counterfeiting investigation." Jed looked at Clara, eyebrows raised. She shook her head. She had no idea how Kellerman knew or why he'd come, but she wasn't about to question Providence. The shooting had stopped now, Thorn's men milling about in confusion. Some were already mounting their horses, deciding that tangling with the army wasn't worth whatever Thorn was paying. "Now then," Kellerman continued, "Mrs. Mayfield, Mr. Carter, if you're able, I'd appreciate you coming out. We have much to discuss." Clara doused the smoldering ceiling with her bucket, then joined Jed at the door. "Could be another trick," he warned. "No," Clara said. "Look at Thorn's face." Through the window, they could see the deputy's expression, rage mixed with dawning fear. This wasn't part of his plan. They emerged slowly, hands visible but near their weapons. Major Kellerman dismounted, approaching with two soldiers flanking him. Up close, Clara could see intelligent eyes in a weathered face, the kind of man who'd seen too much but hadn't let it break him. "Mrs. Mayfield, I'm sorry for the dramatic entrance, but when Doc Holliday reached the fort this morning, I knew we had no time to waste." "Tom," Clara's voice caught, "he rode to Fort Buchanan?" "Rode all night, from what my sentries said, nearly killed his horse. Told me everything, the counterfeiting, the murders, the evidence you've gathered." Kellerman's eyes shifted to Thorn. "Deputy, you and your men will disperse immediately. Any further action against these citizens will be met with federal prosecution." "This is a local matter," Thorn snarled. "These two broke into the land office, assaulted a guard." "Allegedly," Kellerman interrupted. "And even if true, it pales beside the crimes Doc Holliday described, crimes that will be thoroughly investigated. You're taking the word of a drunk doctor and a delusional widow? I'm taking the word of citizens who've risked their lives to expose corruption. As for evidence..." Kellerman smiled coldly. "We'll see what a proper investigation turns up." Thorn's hand twitched toward his gun. Instantly, a dozen carbines swung his way. He froze, then slowly raised his hands. "This isn't over," he said, locking eyes with Clara. "Not by a long shot." "No," she agreed. "It's just beginning." Thorn wheeled his horse around, spurring it viciously. His remaining men followed, a ragged retreat that left several wounded groaning in Clara's yard. Kellerman ordered his medic to tend them, then turned back to Clara and Jed. "Now then, Doc Holliday said you have evidence hidden. I'll need to see it." "With respect, Major," Jed said. "How do we know you're not just another bought man?" Kellerman's weathered face creased in what might have been a smile. Fair question. The answer is, you don't. But consider this. If I were in Thorne's pocket, why reveal myself? Why not let them burn you out, then express regret at arriving too late? He's got a point, Clara admitted. Also, Kellerman added, reaching into his coat, Doc Holliday said to give you this. Said you'd know what it means. He handed Clara a small object, Sam's medical school ring, which she'd given Tom to sell for Sam's funeral expenses. Tom had kept it all this time. All right, Clara said, we'll trust you, but the evidence stays hidden until we know it's safe. Understood. For now, I'm posting guards here. Nobody will bother you. Tomorrow, we'll ride to Tucson together. Judge Brennan needs to hear your story firsthand. As the soldiers set up camp around her property, Clara found herself on the porch with Jed, watching the sun set over the desert. Her house was riddled with bullets, windows gone, but still standing. Think it's really over? She asked. The shooting, maybe, but Thorne's right. This isn't finished. Men like him don't give up easy. No, Clara agreed. But for the first time in 2 years, I'm not facing them alone. That night, for the first time since Sam died, Clara slept without the Colt under her pillow. She woke to commotion, soldiers shouting, horses whinnying. Through her window, she could see Major Kellerman arguing with someone. She dressed quickly, grabbed her gun from habit, and stepped outside. Judge Marcus Thorne sat in an expensive carriage, flanked by 4 armed men. Unlike his brother-in-law's crude violence, the judge radiated cold authority. No right to interfere in civilian affairs, he was saying. These people are wanted for serious crimes. Then present your warrants to Judge Brennan in Tucson, Kellerman replied evenly. I am the duly appointed circuit judge for this district. I don't need Brennan's permission to enforce the law. You do when federal crimes are involved. The judge's eyes found Clara. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Judge Thorne smiled, an expression that never touched his eyes. Mrs. Mayfield, you've caused quite a stir. Your husband would be proud, I'm sure. Don't you dare speak of Sam, Clara said quietly. Oh, but I must. After all, he came to me first with his wild accusations. I tried to reason with him, explain that his imagination was running away with him. Such a pity he wouldn't listen. Clara started forward, but Jed caught her arm. That's what he wants, he murmured. Don't give him the satisfaction. Judge Thorne's smile widened. Mr. Carter, the mysterious drifter. You know, I've been making inquiries about you. Interesting history. Some might say, checkered. We all have histories, Judge. Question is what we do with them. Indeed. Well, I'm sure we'll be discussing yours at length. Major, I'll be filing a formal complaint about this military overreach. Good day. The carriage rolled away, leaving dust and unease in its wake. Kellerman turned to Clara and Jed. We should leave immediately. The judge might try for a legal injunction. Within an hour, they were ready. Clara took one last look at her bullet-scarred house, then climbed into the wagon Kellerman had requisitioned. Jed rode alongside, rifle across his saddle. The journey to Tucson took 2 days. They camped the first night near a small spring, soldiers posted on watch. Clara found herself sitting with Kellerman by the fire, the major smoking a pipe and seemingly lost in thought. Can I ask you something? Clara ventured. Why did you believe Tom? Most wouldn't have. Kellerman was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I knew Sam. Not well, but we'd met. He helped patch up some of my boys after a skirmish with Apaches. Good man. Steady hands. Steadier conscience. He puffed his pipe. When he died, I had my suspicion, but without proof. And now, Now we have a chance to set things right. If we're careful, if we're lucky, and if we're not? Kellerman's smile was grim. Then we'd better be fast. They reached Tucson late the second day. The town was bigger than Dry Creek, bustling with commerce and life. Kellerman led them to a modest hotel near the courthouse. Judge Brennan's expecting us first thing tomorrow. He said, "Get some rest and stay together. Thorne has a long reach." Clara had barely settled into her room when there was a knock. She opened it cautiously to find Rebecca Eastwood, travel-dusty but smiling. "Rebecca, what are you doing here?" "Making sure you're all right and bringing news." Her smile faded. "Thorne's on his way. Both of them. They're bringing their own witnesses, claiming you and Jed are the real counterfeiters, that you killed Sam when he discovered your operation." Clara sank onto the bed. "They're turning it all around." "Let them try," Jed said from the doorway. "We have the truth." "Since when has that been enough?" Clara asked bitterly. "Since we found federal printing plates in Thorne's possession," Rebecca said quietly. "That's my other news. After you left, some of us searched the land office. Really searched it. We found where they'd moved the plates. Judge Thorne's own safe." Clara stared at her. "How did you—" "Walter Chen's nephew is a locksmith, and Miss Palmer. Turns out she worked as a safecracker's assistant in her younger days. Quite the colorful past." Rebecca's grin was impish. "We photographed everything, then put it back. The pictures are with a friend in Phoenix, just in case." "Oh my God," Jed breathed. "Do you realize what you've risked?" "The same thing you risked for us," Rebecca said simply. "The chance to live without fear." That night, Clara lay awake thinking about courage, how it spread like ripples in a pond, touching people in ways you never expected. Tomorrow would bring the fight of their lives, but tonight, she wasn't alone. The courthouse was packed the next morning. Word had spread about the hearing, drawing curious crowds and worried conspirators alike. Clara saw both Thornes in the front row, surrounded by well-dressed lawyers. Judge William Brennan was younger than Clara expected, with sharp eyes and prematurely gray temples. He listened intently as the prosecution, hastily arranged by the Thornes, painted Clara and Jed as desperate criminals who'd murdered an upstanding citizen and tried to frame respected officials. Then it was their turn. Clara told her story simply, without embellishment. Sam's discovery, his death, Joseph's disappearance, the terror of living under Thorne's shadow, Jed corroborated, adding his observations about the town's climate of fear. "A hearsay and speculation?" one of Thorne's lawyers objected. "Perhaps," Judge Brennan said. "But I'm curious about these alleged printing plates. Deputy Thorne, you claim they were planted?" "Absolutely, Your Honor. We've never seen any such—" "Then you won't mind if we search your brother-in-law's office and safe?" The courtroom went very quiet. Judge Thorne stood slowly. "This is harassment. I demand—" "You're in my courtroom, sir. You demand nothing." Brennan gestured to the federal marshals. "Gentlemen, please escort Judge Thorne to his office. Let's settle this matter once and for all." What followed was the longest hour of Clara's life. Then the marshals returned, one carrying a familiar metal box. Judge Brennan examined the contents, his face growing grimmer with each page. "Counterfeiting plates, federal currency, in your safe. Judge Thorne," he looked up. "Care to explain?" "They were planted. This is a conspiracy." "The only conspiracy I see is the one detailed in these ledgers. Names, dates, amounts. Quite thorough." Brennan's gaze swept the courtroom. "Deputy Thorne, Judge Thorne, you're under arrest for counterfeiting, conspiracy, and suspected murder. Marshals, take them." The courtroom erupted. Gale Thorne lunged for his gun but froze as 3 marshals drew on him. Judge Thorne, his dignity crumbling, had to be dragged out, screaming about revenge and retribution. Clara felt Jed's hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. It was over. Really over. "Mrs. Mayfield," Judge Brennan said when order was restored. "The federal government owes you a debt. Your courage, and Mr. Carter's, has exposed a criminal enterprise that might have continued for years. Is there anything the court can do for you?" Clara thought of Sam, of Joseph, of 2 years of fear and loneliness. Then she looked at the faces in the courtroom: Rebecca, Doc Holliday, Walter Chen, others from Dry Creek who'd finally found their courage. "Just justice, Your Honor, that's all any of us wanted." Outside the courthouse, in the bright Tucson sun, Clara found herself surrounded by well-wishers. Through the crowd, she saw Jed hanging back, that familiar half-smile on his face. "You're not leaving, are you?" she asked when she reached him. "Thought I might stick around a while. Dry Creek's going to need a new sheriff, someone honest." "And you think you're that someone?" "No," he said, surprising her. "I think you are. But until the town's ready for that, maybe I'll keep the seat warm." Clara laughed, really laughed, for the first time in years. "Sheriff Carter, it has a nice ring to it. So does Sheriff Mayfield. Give it time." They walked back toward the hotel together, 2 survivors who'd found each other in the storm. Behind them, the courthouse cast long shadows. Ahead, the road home stretched out, no longer a path of fear but one of possibility. The lonely widow had fought off 4 men. Then he'd shown up with a shotgun. And together, they'd changed everything. The journey back to Dry Creek took 3 days, their wagon accompanied by federal marshals tasked with securing evidence and arresting the remaining conspirators. Clara watched the familiar landscape roll by. Mesas and arroyos that had once seemed like prison walls now looked like freedom. "Nervous?" Jed asked, riding alongside. "Terrified," Clara admitted. "It's one thing to win in court. It's another to face the town again. They'll come around. Fear makes people do shameful things, but shame can lead to redemption." As they crested the final hill, Dry Creek spread below them like a child's toy town. But something was different. Clara could see crowds in the street, and for a heart-stopping moment, she thought it was another mob. Then she saw the banners. "Welcome home, Clara." "Thank you, heroes." The crowd surged forward as their wagon rolled down Main Street, not with torches and anger, but with flowers and tearful apologies. Mrs. Henderson, who had pulled her daughter away just days ago, now pushed forward with a basket of fresh bread. "I'm sorry," she said simply. "We all are." Clara took the basket with trembling hands. "Thank you, Martha." At the jail, Sheriff Dawson stood with his badge in his hand. He'd sobered up, Clara noticed, though his hand still shook. "Mrs. Mayfield," he said formally. "I've tendered my resignation to the town council. What's left of it, anyway." He held out the badge. "This belongs to someone better." "Keep it for now," Jed said, dismounting. "The town needs continuity while we sort things out." Dawson's relief was palpable. "Yes, sir. I mean, who's in charge now?" "The people," Clara said firmly. "The way it always should have been." The next days blurred together in a whirlwind of activity. Federal investigators descended on the town, methodically unraveling years of corruption. The land office safe yielded more evidence, documents implicating officials in 3 neighboring counties. The counterfeiting ring, it seemed, had been just one tentacle of a larger criminal enterprise. Clara found herself at the center of it all, helping investigators understand Sam's notes, identifying documents, providing context. Jed worked alongside the marshals, his experience as a tracker proving invaluable in locating hidden caches of counterfeit bills. One evening, exhausted from another day of testimony, Clara found Rebecca Eastwood waiting on her porch, her bullet-scarred, weather-beaten porch that had become a symbol of resistance. "How are you holding up?" Rebecca asked. "I'm not sure I know anymore." Clara sank into a chair. "For 2 years, all I wanted was justice for Sam. Now that I have it, you don't know what comes next." "Exactly." Rebecca smiled. "Maybe that's the point. For the first time, you get to choose." That night, Clara walked through her empty house, running her hands over the patched bullet holes, the scorch marks on the ceiling. So much violence in these walls, so much pain, but also strength, defiance, hope. She found Jed in the barn, tending his horse. They'd barely spoken since returning, both caught up in the investigation's demands. "Planning on leaving?" she asked. He looked up, surprised. "Why would you think that?" "Because men like you don't stay. You drift in, save the day, drift out. It's what you do." "Maybe," he went back to brushing the horse, "or maybe men like me are just looking for a reason to stop drifting." "And have you found one?" He set down the brush, meeting her eyes. "I found several. A town that needs rebuilding, a sheriff's job that needs doing right." He paused. "A woman who shouldn't have to face her ghosts alone." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. "Jed!" "I know it's too soon. I know you're still grieving. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to stay, to help, to be whatever you need me to be. And if what I need is a friend, then that's what I'll be." They stood there in the lantern light, two damaged souls recognizing something in each other that went beyond words. Finally, Clara nodded. "Stay." The next morning brought unexpected visitors. A delegation from the territorial government, led by a stern woman named Catherine Morse, newly appointed to oversee the region's reconstruction. "Mrs. Mayfield," she said crisply, "I've read the reports. Your courage in exposing this corruption has been extraordinary. I had help. Yes, Mr. Carter, and the citizens who finally stood up. But you were the catalyst." She paused. "I'm here to offer you a position, territorial investigator, working directly for the governor's office. Your job would be to root out corruption wherever it hides." Clara blinked. "I'm not a lawman, and neither were half the men wearing badges in this territory. But you have something more valuable: integrity and experience surviving the worst men can do." "I need to think about it." "Of course, but Clara, this territory needs people like you, people who won't be bought, won't be intimidated, won't look away." After Catherine Morse left, Clara found the town in an uproar. Word of the offer had spread and opinions flew like dust in a windstorm. "You can't leave us," Walter Chen said bluntly. "This town needs you." "For what?" Clara asked. "Mayor," Doc Holliday suggested, then laughed at her expression. "Why not? You've already faced down worse than budget meetings." "I was thinking school board," Rebecca added. "We need to teach the next generation to be better than we were." That afternoon, Clara called a town meeting. The hall that had once echoed with calls for her blood now filled with neighbors. Some shamefaced, some hopeful, all waiting to hear what she would say. "2 years ago," Clara began, her voice carrying to the back rows, "my husband died trying to make this town honest. For 2 years. I've lived with your suspicion, your fear, your hatred. I could leave now, take the territorial position and never look back." Silence stretched taut. "But," she continued, "this is my home. Sam built our house with his own hands. He's buried in your cemetery. His dreams are in this soil. She looked across the faces. I'll stay, but only if this town commits to real change. No more rule by fear. No more looking away when wrong is done. We rebuild together, or not at all. The applause started slowly, then built to thunder. When it died, Mayor Hutchins, who'd somehow avoided arrest by turning state's evidence, stood nervously. What do you propose, Mrs. Mayfield? New elections, complete transparency in town finances, a citizens' oversight committee. She paused. And a new sheriff. I nominate Jed Carter. Jed looked startled, but the crowd's approval was immediate. Within an hour, he wore the star, looking uncomfortable but determined. That night, they celebrated at Clara's house. Rebecca, Doc Holliday, Walter Chen, the Palmers, and others who'd found courage when it mattered. The bullet holes were still there, but now they seemed like badges of honor. Speech, someone called out, and Clara found herself standing, glass in hand. To Sam, she said simply. To Joseph, to everyone who's paid the price for truth, and to second chances. To second chances, the room echoed. Later, after the guests had gone, Clara and Jed sat on the porch watching stars appear in the desert sky. Sheriff Carter, she mused. It suits you. Temporary sheriff, until the town finds someone permanent. Maybe they already have. He smiled. We'll see. What about you? Still thinking about that territorial job? No. Clara surprised herself with the certainty. My fight is here, making sure what happened to Sam never happens to anyone else. It's a big job. A good thing I've got help. They lapsed into comfortable silence. After a while, Jed said, That first night when I made camp at your gate, I told you I was tired of standing by. I remember. What I didn't say was that I'd been drifting for 3 years. Since Mary and Emma died, looking for a place to stop, a reason to care again. He turned to her. I found both here. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Sam would have liked you. I hope so. I hope he'd understand that I'm not trying to replace him, just trying to honor what he started. He'd understand. Sam always saw the best in people. It's what got him killed, but it's also what made him worth loving. A coyote called in the distance, answered by another. The desert was coming alive with its nighttime symphony. There's still danger, Jed warned. The Thorns have friends. There'll be revenge attempts. I know, but I'm not alone anymore. Clara stood, gathering her shawl. Good night, Sheriff. Good night, Clara. She paused at the door. Jed, thank you for everything. Thank you for letting me stay. Inside, Clara prepared for bed, but first she stopped at Sam's photograph on the mantel. We did it, she whispered. It cost everything, but we did it. The photograph, of course, didn't answer. But somewhere in the quiet of the house, Clara felt a presence, approval perhaps, or just the peace that comes from justice served. Outside, Jed made his rounds, the new sheriff of a town struggling toward redemption. His footsteps echoed on the boardwalk, steady and sure. At the jail, he found Dawson still at the desk. Go home, Bill, Jed said gently, but your wife's waiting. I made such a mess of things, Dawson said miserably. Letting Thorn run wild, turning blind eyes. We all did. But tomorrow's a new day. Question is, what are you going to do with it? Dawson straightened slightly. Doc Holliday offered me a job, helping at his clinic. Says I need purpose more than whiskey. Smart man, Doc, you should take it. Maybe I will. Dawson stood, leaving the badge on the desk. Sheriff Carter, treat her well. The town? You know what I mean. After Dawson left, Jed sat in the sheriff's chair, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Through the window, he could see Clara's house, windows glowing with lamplight. She was probably reading Sam's journal again, making sure nothing was missed, no truth left buried. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The federal investigators would finish their work and leave. The town would have to stand on its own feet, build new traditions of honesty and courage. There would be setbacks, failures, moments of doubt. But tonight, Dry Creek slept peacefully. The widow Mayfield was no longer alone. The mysterious drifter had found his home, and in the jail that had once housed corruption, a new sheriff kept watch, shotgun across his knees, ready to defend the fragile peace they'd won. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to human struggles. But beneath them, a small town in the Arizona Territory began the long journey from fear to freedom, from suspicion to trust, from darkness to light. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. But for the first time in years, it was possible. And in the morning, when the sun painted the desert gold and the roosters announced a new day, Clara Mayfield would step onto her bullet-scarred porch and face the future without fear. Beside her, perhaps, would stand a man who'd arrived with a shotgun and stayed with his heart. But that was tomorrow's story. Tonight was for rest, for gratitude, for the quiet celebration of survival against all odds. Tonight was for hope. The morning of the public meeting dawned clear and cold, frost glittering on the desert sage. Clara stood before her mirror, pinning up her hair with steady hands. Today, she would face the town not as the scorned widow, but as someone who'd helped save them from themselves. "You ready for this?" Jed asked from the doorway. He'd taken to checking on her each morning before his rounds, a routine that had become oddly comforting. "No," Clara admitted, "but Sam used to say courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it." "Smart man, you're Sam." "He was—" She turned from the mirror. "How many do you think will come?" "Rebecca says the church is already half full, and it's still an hour before the meeting." Clara's stomach tightened. She'd prepared for days, organizing evidence, practicing what she would say, but facing a room full of people who'd once wished her dead. That was different from facing their guns. The walk to church felt both endless and too short. People lined the streets, some nodding respectfully, others looking away in shame. Clara kept her eyes forward. Sam's journal clutched in her hands like a talisman. The church was packed, every pew filled, people standing along the walls. At the front, a table had been set up with the evidence, ledgers, photographs, copies of documents. Rebecca and Doc Holliday sat in the first row, offering encouraging smiles. Clara took her place at the podium, waiting for silence. When it came, it was absolute. 2 years ago, she began, her voice stronger than she'd expected. "My husband discovered a cancer in this town. It cost him his life. It cost his brother's life. It nearly cost mine." She paused, looking across the faces. "But the real cost was to all of us. We became a town ruled by fear, where good people did nothing while evil flourished." She opened Sam's journal, though she knew the words by heart. Sam wrote, "A town is only as strong as its willingness to face the truth. Today, we face our truths. All of them. For the next hour, Clara laid out everything, the counterfeiting ring, the murders, the intimidation. She named names, showed evidence, pulled back every curtain that had hidden Dry Creek's shame. When she spoke of Sam's death, her voice broke, but she pushed through. "The Thorns are in custody," she continued. "Their accomplices are being rounded up, but they were just the symptom. The disease was our silence, our cowardice, our willingness to look away." "What do you want from us?" The voice came from the middle of the room, Tom Morrison, Bull's younger brother. Clara tensed, but his tone held no threat, only weariness. I want us to do better, Clara said simply. I want us to build the town Sam believed we could be. Just honest, brave. How? This from Mrs. Henderson. How do we come back from this? Clara had prepared for this question. First, we acknowledge what happened, not just the crimes, but our complicity in allowing them. Then we make amends where we can. Finally, we put systems in place to ensure it never happens again. What kind of systems? Walter Chen asked. Term limits for all officials, public budget meetings, a citizen review board for law enforcement, and education, teaching our children to question authority, to speak truth even when it's dangerous. That's a lot of change, someone muttered. Yes, Clara agreed. It is. But the alternative is to remain the town that let two good men die rather than face uncomfortable truths. Silence fell again. Then slowly, old Martha Palmer stood up. At 90, she was Dry Creek's oldest resident, her word carrying weight that transcended law or badge. I was here when this town was founded, she said, her voice thin but clear. Watched it grow from tents to buildings, saw good times and bad, but never have I been so ashamed as these past years, watching fear turn neighbors into strangers. She looked directly at Clara. You saved us from the thorns, child. More importantly, you saved us from ourselves. I say we listen. One by one, others stood. Doc Holliday, Rebecca, Walter Chen, the schoolmaster, the blacksmith, the woman who ran the laundry. Soon half the room was on their feet. All in favor of Mrs. Mayfield's proposals? Jed called out in his capacity as sheriff. The ayes were overwhelming. Then let's get to work, Clara said, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. The meeting broke into committees: finance, education, law enforcement oversight. Clara found herself surrounded by people eager to help, to make amends, to build something better. Mrs. Mayfield, a young woman, approached hesitantly. Clara recognized her. Sarah Coulter, Jake's wife. I wanted to apologize, and for my husband's actions, and for my silence. We all made mistakes, Clara said gently. No, you didn't. You stood up when no one else would. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Jake's in jail now. Good riddance, I say. But I've got 2 boys to raise, and I want them to be different, better. Will you help me? Clara gripped the woman's hands. We'll help each other. As the committees organized, Clara slipped outside for air. She found Jed on the church steps, watching the street. Proud of you, he said simply. I couldn't have done it without you. Sure you could. Might have taken longer, but you'd have found a way. It's who you are. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the town bustle with new purpose. Then Jed cleared his throat. Clara, there's something I need to tell you about my past. She looked at him, noting the tension in his shoulders. You don't owe me explanations. Maybe not, but you deserve them. He took a breath. Before I was a marshal, I rode with some rough men. Not outlaws exactly, but close enough. We hired out our guns. Didn't ask too many questions about right or wrong. Clara waited, sensing there was more. One job went bad. We were supposed to escort a land speculator, turn out some farmers who wouldn't sell. But it escalated. Women and children got hurt. I tried to stop it, but... He shook his head. I quit that life, became a marshal trying to make amends. Then Mary and Emma died while I was off being righteous, and I realized the universe doesn't keep score. Why are you telling me this? Because if we're building something here, the town, whatever's between us, it should be on truth. All of it. Clara considered his words. We've all done things we regret, The question is what we do next. And what do we do next? Before Clara could answer, commotion erupted from the church. They rushed back inside to find Marshal Stevens, one of the federal men, addressing the crowd. "I apologize for interrupting," he said. "But we've received word. Gale Thorne escaped during transfer to Yuma, killed 2 guards. The room erupted in fearful murmurs. Clara felt ice in her veins. She'd known this peace was fragile, but she'd hoped for more time. "He'll come here," someone said, "for revenge." "Let him come," Jed said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "We're not the same town he terrorized. We're ready now." "Are we?" Tom Morrison asked. "Most of us aren't fighters." "You don't have to be," Clara said, finding her voice. "You just have to stand together." That's what Thorne never understood. His power came from our division. United, we're stronger than any one man's hatred. "Clara's right," Rebecca said. "We post watches, we arm ourselves, we protect each other. No more hiding behind closed doors." Plans formed quickly. Guard rotations, warning signals, safe houses for the vulnerable. The fear was still there, but now it had purpose, direction. That night, Clara found herself on watch with Rebecca at the schoolhouse, rifles across their laps. "Strange days," Rebecca mused. 2 months ago, I was teaching grammar and arithmetic. Now I'm standing guard against killers. Regrets? None. For the first time, I feel like I'm truly living instead of just existing. She paused. "What about you and the sheriff?" Clara felt heat in her cheeks. "What about us?" "Oh, please, the whole town sees how he looks at you, how you look at him. It's complicated. Love always is, but Clara, Sam wouldn't want you to be alone forever." "I know." Clara's voice was soft. "It's just, how do you open your heart again when you know how much it can hurt to lose someone?" By remembering how much it hurts to never try." They lapsed into silence, watching shadows move across the desert. Then Rebecca stiffened. "Did you see that?" Clara followed her gaze. Nothing at first, then movement near the old well. "Go ring the bell," Clara whispered. "I'll keep watch." Rebecca slipped away. Moments later, the church bell began tolling. 3 rings. Pause. 3 rings. The danger signal. Lights appeared in windows. Armed citizens emerged from buildings when within minutes the town was awake and ready. The shadows near the well resolved into figures, 4 men moving stealthily toward the jail. Clara recognized the lead figure's walk even in darkness. Gale Thorne. "That's far enough. Thorne!" Jed's voice rang out from the jail roof. "You're surrounded." It was true. Townspeople had taken positions on rooftops, behind water troughs, in doorways. Dozens of guns trained on the 4 intruders. Thorne's laugh was ugly. "You think these shopkeepers and farmers scare me?" "No," Clara called out, stepping into view. "But you should be scared of what we've become. We're not victims anymore." "Hey, Clara Mayfield." Thorne's voice dripped venom. "This is all your fault. You killed my life, my career, my family's name. You did that yourself. I just held up a mirror. I'm going to enjoy killing you." "You can try," Jed said. "But you'll be dead before you clear leather. Look around. Thorne, really look." Thorne did, and perhaps for the first time truly saw what faced him. Not a mob of frightened citizens, but a community. United, armed, determined. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Yes," Clara said firmly, "and it is." For a long moment, violence hung in the air like smoke. Then one of Thorne's men broke, backing away. "This is suicide, Gale. They'll cut us down." "Coward," Thorne spat, but another of his men was already retreating. In the end, Thorne stood alone, rage and reality warring on his face. Finally, slowly, he raised his hands. "Smart choice. Jed said on Doc. Tom, help me secure the prisoners and everyone else maintain positions until we've got them locked down. The arrest was almost anticlimactic. Thorne and his remaining man were disarmed, shackled, locked in the jail's strongest cell. This time, Clara noticed, the transfer to Yuma would include a full military escort. As dawn broke, the town gathered again in the street. Exhausted but victorious faces looked to Clara and Jed. "We did it," someone said wonderingly. "We actually did it." "Together," Clara emphasized. "That's the only way it works." Old Martha Palmer pushed through the crowd. "I have something to say. Clara Mayfield, this town owes you more than we can repay. So we're going to try anyway." She produced a leather folder. "We took up a collection to rebuild your house, make it right. It's not much, but it's everything," Clara said, tears flowing freely now. "Thank you." The crowd dispersed slowly, neighbors talking, planning, connecting in ways they hadn't for years. Clara found herself alone with Jed as the sun painted the street gold. "So," he said, "we survived. Question is, what comes next?" Clara looked at her bullet-scarred house, at the town that had nearly destroyed her and then saved itself, at the man who'd appeared with a shotgun when she needed him most. "We build," she said, "Warren, we grow, we live. Together?" She met his eyes, seeing in them a future she was finally ready to embrace. Together. As if by mutual agreement, they walked toward her house. There was work to do, repairs to make, systems to build, trust to nurture. It wouldn't be easy. Democracy never was. Justice never was. Love never was. But for the first time in 2 years, Clara Mayfield looked forward to tomorrow. The lonely widow had fought off 4 men, and he had shown up with a shotgun. Together, they'd saved a town. Now it was time to build a life. 6 months had passed since Gale Thorne's capture, and Dry Creek barely resembled the fear-riddled town it had once been. Clara stood in her newly rebuilt kitchen, sunlight streaming through windows that no longer bore bullet holes. The house smelled of fresh lumber and paint, every board a testament to the community's determination to make things right. "Mail's here," Jed called from the porch. He'd made a habit of stopping by each morning after his rounds, though lately those visits stretched longer, often through breakfast. Clara wiped her hands on her apron and joined him. Among the usual notices in newspapers was a thick envelope bearing an official seal. "A federal court," Jed noted. "The verdict?" Clara's hands trembled slightly as she opened it. They'd testified at the trial 2 months ago, traveling to Prescott to face the Thorne brothers one last time. She read quickly, then slower, savoring each word. A guilty, all counts, Gale Thorne, life in prison, Judge Marcus Thorne, 25 years. She looked up at Jed, tears threatening. "It's really over." "The legal part, maybe. The rest?" He gestured toward town, where she could see Rebecca teaching through the schoolhouse windows. Doc Holliday tending his expanded clinic. Walter Chen serving customers with his nephew, the former locksmith now learning honest trade. "The rest we build day by day," Clara finished. "Speaking of building," Jed cleared his throat, suddenly nervous. "I've been thinking. This back and forth between my room at the boarding house and here, it seems inefficient," Clara suggested, fighting a smile. "That's one word." He reached into his vest pocket, producing a small silver band. "This was Mary's. I've carried it for 3 years, never thinking I'd... But Clara, these months with you, watching you transform this town, seeing your strength and grace. Jed, let me finish. I know it's not conventional. I know people will talk. But haven't we proven we don't much care what people say?" He took her hand. "Clara Mayfield, Would you consider becoming Clara Carter? Or Mayfield Carter, if you prefer? I'm not particular about names, just about the woman wearing them. Clara looked at the ring, simple and worn smooth with age. Then at the man offering it. She thought of Sam, of the love they'd shared and lost. But Sam was gone, and she was alive. And her heart, battered and scarred though it was, had learned to beat again. Yes, she said simply, yes, I'll marry you. His kiss was answer enough, gentle and sure, full of promise for all the tomorrows ahead. When? He asked when they parted. Soon, but Jed, there's something we need to discuss first. She led him inside, to the table where she'd spread out correspondence. I've been getting letters from other towns. Word spread about what we did here. Jed examined the letters, pleas for help from communities plagued by corruption, requests for advice on establishing oversight systems, invitations to speak about citizen justice. That territorial investigator position. Clara continued. Catherine Morse wrote again. She's willing to modify it. We'd be based here but travel when needed. Both of us. Partners. Law work again. Jed's expression was thoughtful. I swore I was done with that life. This would be different, not hunting outlaws, building systems to prevent them, teaching communities to govern themselves honestly. Clara touched his hand. But only if you want to. We have a good life here. Do we? Or are we hiding from the larger fight? Jed squeezed her fingers. You're right. If we can help other towns avoid Dry Creek's mistakes, yes, let's do it. A knock interrupted them. Rebecca entered, beaming. Sorry to intrude, but, Clara, did you say yes? The whole town's waiting to know. Clara laughed. How did you never mind? Yes, I said yes. Rebecca squealed, hugging them both. Finally. Do you know how painful it's been watching you two dance around each other? When's the wedding? We haven't, Clara began, but Rebecca was already planning. Next Saturday, the church is free. I'll organize the women for cooking. The Hendersons can provide flowers from their garden. Rebecca, Jed interrupted gently. Don't we get a say? Of course, as long as you say next Saturday. She grinned at their expressions. This town needs something to celebrate. Let us do this for you, please. Clara looked at Jed, who shrugged. Next Saturday it is, she agreed. The week flew by in a whirlwind of preparations. The whole town threw itself into wedding planning with an enthusiasm that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. Even former enemies contributed. Tom Morrison offered his best horses for the carriage. The Coulter women sewed Clara's dress. The night before the wedding, Clara walked alone to the cemetery. Sam's grave was well tended now. Fresh flowers placed regularly by townspeople who remembered. She knelt beside the headstone, tracing his name with her fingers. I hope you understand, she whispered. I'll always love you, always carry you with me. But I'm choosing to live, Sam, to love again, to continue the work we started. The wind rustled through the mesquite trees, and for a moment, Clara could almost hear Sam's voice, warm with approval. Be happy, Clara, be happy. She was still wiping tears when footsteps approached. Doc Holliday stood respectfully back, hat in hand. Sorry to intrude. I was visiting too. He gestured to a newer grave his wife, taken by influenza years ago. Wanted to tell her about tomorrow, about how the town's changed. They stood together in companionable silence. Finally, Doc said, Sam would be proud of you, of all of us, but especially you. Thank you, Tom, for everything, for riding to the fort that night. Least I could do, though my horse might disagree. He smiled sadly. I wasted so many years being afraid. Clara, don't waste yours. The wedding day dawned perfect. Clear skies, cool breeze, the desert blooming with late spring flowers. Clara stood before her mirror in Rebecca's room, wearing the simple white dress the Coulter women had created. It wasn't fancy, but it was made with care, each stitch an apology and a promise. "You're beautiful," Rebecca said, pinning wildflowers in Clara's hair. "Jed won't know what hit him." "I'm nervous," Clara admitted. "Is that foolish after everything we've faced?" "Not at all. Facing outlaws is one thing. Pledging your life to someone, that takes real courage." A knock came at the door. Martha Palmer entered, carrying something wrapped in tissue. "This was my mother's," she said, revealing a delicate lace veil. "Brought over from Ireland. I'd be honored if you'd wear it." Clara's throat tightened. "Martha, I couldn't—" "Yes, you can. You gave this town back its soul. Child, let us give you what we can." The church was packed, every seat filled, people standing in the aisles. As Clara entered on Doc Holliday's arm, he'd insisted on the honor. She saw faces that had once wished her harm now shining with joy. The transformation still took her breath away, but it was Jed who truly stole her breath. He stood at the altar in his best suit, the sheriff's star polished bright, his eyes soft with emotion. Beside him stood Major Kellerman, who'd ridden in for the occasion. The ceremony was simple, the vows traditional with one addition. When Reverend Adams asked about rings, Jed produced not just Mary's band but a second ring. "This was Sam's," he said quietly. "Tom saved it, kept it safe. I had it resized for my hand, if that's all right." Clara couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. So she nodded, slipping Sam's ring onto Jed's finger. Past and present. Sorrow and joy, all bound together in bands of silver. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Adams declared. "Sheriff, you may kiss your bride." The kiss was brief, appropriate for public viewing, but it held promises of deeper intimacy to come. The church erupted in cheers, and Clara found herself laughing through tears as rice rained down. The reception filled the main street, tables groaning with food, musicians playing lively tunes. Clara danced with Jed, with Doc, with Walter Chen, even with Tom Morrison, who apologized again for his brother's actions. "Stop apologizing," Clara told him. "We're building something new. The past is done." As evening approached, Jed pulled Clara aside. "Ready to go?" "Go where? This is our home." "Tonight, yes, but I thought—" He produced 2 train tickets. "San Francisco, 3 days. Rebecca's idea, she's arranged everything. But the town will survive 3 days without us. Doc's covering sheriff duties, Rebecca has the school. The committees are running smoothly." He grinned. "Turns out we built something that doesn't need us watching every moment." Clara kissed him soundly. "Have I told you lately that you're wonderful?" "Not in the last hour." They slipped away amid good-natured catcalls and well wishes. At the house, their house now, Clara changed into traveling clothes while Jed loaded their bags onto the wagon. "One more stop," he said, helping her up. He drove to the edge of town, to a spot overlooking the valley. The sunset painted the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Dry Creek spread below them like a promise kept. "Why here?" Clara asked. "Because this is where I first saw the town, that day I rode in. I was just planning to pass through, maybe rest a night." He wrapped his arm around her. "Then I heard about a widow who'd fought off 4 men, and something made me stay. Thank God you did." "Thanks, Sam," Jed corrected gently. His courage started all this, his notes, his determination. We just finished what he began. They sat in silence, watching the lights of Dry Creek flicker to life. Tomorrow they'd leave for their wedding trip, and when they returned, the territorial job awaited. There would be other corrupt towns to help, other frightened citizens to inspire. The work Sam had died for would continue, but tonight, Clara Carter sat with her new husband, looking down at a town transformed. Where once there had been fear, now there was hope. Where once there had been silence, now there was justice. Where once she had been alone, now she was partnered in life and purpose. "No regrets?" Jed asked softly. "None," Clara replied, "only gratitude." "For what?" "For 4 drunk men who thought they could intimidate me. For the courage to fight back. For you showing up when I needed you most." She smiled. "For second chances." "To second chances," Jed agreed, kissing her temple. Below them, Dry Creek settled into peaceful evening. The saloon's piano tinkled with celebratory music. Families walked the streets without fear. Children played in the last light of day. It had been a long, brutal journey from that morning when Clara had spilled her flower in the dust, facing down men who thought her helpless. But every scar, every tear, every moment of terror had led to this. A town reborn, a love found, a future bright with possibility. The lonely widow had fought off 4 men. He had shown up with a shotgun. Together, they had rewritten the fate of an entire community. And this, Clara thought as Jed helped her back into the wagon for the ride to the station, this was only the beginning.